Hey everyone, Clay here. Just wanted to let you know I've got a new comic book out right now from Comixology Originals and Amazon. It's called Hard Style Juice. It's a professional wrestling murder mystery, so if you're into pro wrestling and comics and all that good stuff, you're going to want to check it out. And it's free to read if you have Amazon Prime. It's a digital-only comic. If you want to check it out, head over to hardstylejuice.com, and that'll direct you right to the page where you can check it out. That's hardstylejuice.com. Thanks, guys. Hello! Welcome back to the Rotten Horror Picture Show, the horror movie podcast where we talk about films off the Rotten Tomatoes 200 Best Horror Movies of All Time list. My name is Clay. With me, as always, is Amanda. How are you doing, Amanda?
I'm good. I'm just full of all the souls that I've eaten.
Excellent. Yummy.
Healthy.
I've got a cellar full of cats hanging from their necks.
Aww.
Smoking them, keeping them for later.
Smoking them.
See, the trick to smoking cats is you got to hang them by the neck by barbed wire and then light your daughter on fire in the middle of the room.
Got it.
And then the smoke will do what smoke does.
Specifically your own daughter.
Yes.
Yeah, got to be your own daughter or it just doesn't come out the same.
No, the flavor is completely different.
Got it.
Yeah. We are, of course, talking about...
Everyone knows that reference.
The fourth film in our Summer Cabin series. Summer Cabin? Is that what I call it? The Summer Cabin series?
Sure.
We are talking about the Evil Dead remake from 2013, known only as Evil Dead. So if you are putting these on the shelf, do you put the first one under T and this one under E to differentiate? Where do you stand on that as an English person? As far as like, does the count if you're alphabetizing?
Typically, no.
Yeah.
At least not the way I've always done it.
Yeah.
I
would
do it. I think in this case, you'd have to stick chronological.
Yeah, probably.
Right? It's too confusing once you got two Evil Deads.
Yeah. If you start putting then you've got alphabetization inside. It's like a Russian doll.
Everything goes under T, and then you've got essentially a whole other system just living nested under the letter T.
You've got you need the A and then the B, and this is a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to do that.
Yeah. English is dumb.
Yeah. Organization in general is a nightmare. But this is the remake of Evil Dead. It is not on our list, but it does have...
Interesting.
What does it have here? It has a 63% Rotten Tomato score with a 64% audience score, which is surprisingly pretty even.
Yeah.
I feel like that's more even than we usually see.
Yeah.
Had you seen this before?
I had. I feel like we watched this during COVID.
I think it was like late COVID because we watched it together.
Yep.
In person.
Yes.
I forget what the occasion. It was just a bunch of us hanging out, and we just threw it on.
Fucking why not? Yeah. So yes, I have seen this before.
Yeah, this may sound more depressing than I want it to.
Oh boy!
But I think it is liberating. What I'm about to say.
Oh, okay.
If my memory serves me, Evil Dead 2013 is the very first movie I ever went to by myself.
Oh.
Because I could not find anyone else to go with me.
Now, okay, so I was about to say, that doesn't sound depressing at all. That sounds great. And then you had to add because you couldn't find anyone else to go with
it was one of those things where it's like...
It was one of those things where you and I didn't really know each other that well yet. We'd met by that point, but we didn't know each other.
Yeah. I think our movie-going experience, shared movie-going experiences, was we had gone to see Only God Forgives, the Ryan Gosling movie.
Yep.
And you did not like it very much.
Yeah.
whereas I very much enjoyed that. So I didn't realize how much on the same page we might be. But, seeing the trailers and stuff and knowing how gruesome this was going to be, I was like, I don't know, this is going to be a hard sell for anybody, so I'll just go by myself.
But see, I don't find that depressing at all.
No, like I said, it was very. I used to think going to the movies by yourself was something that only losers and perverts did. But I do it all the time now.
Pervert sitting over here.
I do it all the time now, and I am confident it is because it is an enjoyable activity and not because I fall into either of those other two categories.
It's like going to a show.
Yeah.
Like going to see a band you really like just because you want to go see that band, not because like you have a specific person you want to go with.
Yeah. I love going to midnight movies. It just sounds more perverted. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it does.
Anyway.
Yeah, you just keep making it worse.
Yeah, well.
All right, King
That's what
Pervert.
happens when you get older. I like going to the midnight movie and talking to the kids who show up.
You had to catch me right as I took a sip of my drink, huh?
My goal, I don't know if you've I've never said this.
Force me to ruin your mic?
Yes.
Okay.
I have never said this out loud, and I think by doing this I'm going to ruin it. My goal is to get you to do a spit take.
I know.
Okay.
I've known.
All right.
You'll still probably catch me one of these days.
Anyway, we're going to take a quick break and play the trailer for you, and we'll be back to talk about Evil Dead.
Please. You have to get me out of here. Leave this book alone. You don't understand. There was something in the woods. And I think it's in here with us now. You are all going to die tonight.
I read a passage from that book. I released some evil. Oh my God! What did you do that?
We're gonna get you, not another peep. Time to go to sleep.
Okay, Evil Dead. By the way, I understand that if I am successful in my mission,
Yes.
I will get beer all over me,
Yeah,
and it
yeah.
will be gross.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
sacrifices for my art.
I'm going to do it in the style of a Stephen Colbert to Jon Stewart spit take. Yes.
Evil Dead from 2013, directed by Fede Alvarez, written by Fede Alvarez and Rodo Sayagues. Sure. Apparently, Diablo Cody did uncredited punch up on it because Alvarez and Sayagues aren't native English speakers, and so she just kind of like tightened up some of the dialogue.
Sure.
And starring Jane Levy, Shiloh Fernandez, Jessica Lucas, Lou Taylor Pucci, Elizabeth Blackmore, Phoenix Connolly, and 70,000 gallons of fake blood.
Oof.
Amanda, what happens in Evil Dead?
5 friends head to a remote cabin where they discover a Book of the Dead, which leads them to unwittingly summon up demons living in the nearby woods.
I really like that because it sounds like the demons also have a cabin,
Right.
like nearby.
Right. Yeah. They're just neighbors, and they're like, hey, why'd you call us?
Yeah, you guys are partying too loud over there. Don't make
The
us
demon
possess
police come for a noise complaint. Well, Clay, some things you'll find in Evil Dead 2013 edition include severely undercooked meat.
you. Yeah, I know it's there for effect, but that she needed to put that back in, that
For
roast back in for like another
If
hour.
she had put it in at all.
Yeah, yeah.
Errant face skin as banana peel gag.
Yeah, I feel like that was something Sam Raimi probably really enjoyed.
Yeah.
Was someone slipping on a piece of cheek.
Yep, and cracking their head on a ceramic fixture. The car, the necklace, the book.
All there, the things people came to see.
Gotta have them all. The triumphant return of tree rape.
Yes, you've been waiting for it.
Oh, yeah, everyone has.
What you've been saying, when
Specifically.
are we going to get another tree rape?
Preferably extra graphic, please.
Well, I would almost say this is
Are you going to defend the...
this is a classier tree rape than the first one. It's a lot more subtle.
I thought you were going to say it's a lot more sensual, and I was going to be like,
I mean,
no.
All right.
Addiction metaphor, grief metaphor, trauma metaphor.
That's how you know it's a horror movie from the 2010s.
Yep. Vomit to the face, burns to the face, glass to the face, nails to the face, box cutter to the face, self-amputation with electric knife, self-amputation with Jeep, homemade defibrillator, and a dog named Grandpa.
I don't think we're going to see another self-amputation with Jeep.
Yeah, I think that one
which is unfortunate.
Unique to this movie and this movie alone.
Yeah. So, Evil Dead, the remake.
Yes.
This was made primarily in response to the fact that Evil Dead, even though there hadn't been a movie for excuse me,
that many years, my God.
Yep, all the dust from the last one.
From the crypt where the last one is laying.
I guess 20 years at this point, because I think Evil Dead, Army of Darkness is like 92 or something. And
yep.
So this is 2013, obviously. And
20 years.
The only question that Bruce Campbell seemed to get at every single thing he ever did is, when are you going to make another Evil Dead? And so instead of doing that, they decided to remake it, which I guess at first Bruce was not into, because he didn't like the idea of another Ash, I guess, which I don't blame him.
Yeah.
But then they said they were thinking about not recasting and doing something different. Then he was like, "Oh, okay, sure, I like money." But I guess Sam was into it right away, because he always thought it was the kind of movie that would benefit from reinterpretation and remaking and stuff.
Yeah.
And so they hire Fede Alvarez, based off of, I think, if my memory serves me, based off of a short film that he did that he uploaded to like YouTube.
Oh.
About like giant robots and spaceships or something.
So was this Alvarez's first big movie?
I believe that it was. Let me just check really quickly here.
Because it feels like he kind of came out of nowhere with this. I don't know if that's just my misperception, though.
This is his... Yeah, I believe this is his first... Fucking IMDb. Give me a fucking break here. Okay. Yep, this is his first full-length feature.
Wow.
Yeah. Which is pretty impressive.
I was going to say, like, not to jump the gun, but I enjoy this movie, and looking at it through that lens, I enjoy it even more.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, holy shit, this guy kind of arrived fully formed in a lot of ways.
Especially since he has more of a background in CGI, I guess. And this movie is pretty heavily traditional practical special effects.
Right, which is awesome.
Yeah, and it looks fantastic, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now,
yes,
to get us into this, the one thing that I remember, I had a friend from college who shared my love of the Evil Dead franchise. And I saw this, and I came away and I said, that was pretty good. I enjoyed that. And she said she hated it. And I said, why'd you hate it? She said, because it wasn't funny. And then that made me think about that, because the Evil Dead franchise has built humor into it so fundamentally at this point that to go back to the first movie, which was for all intents and purposes not meant to be a comedy,
right,
and double down on that could actually turn some people off.
Sure.
I know in the press marketing leading up to this coming out. They really pushed the fact that this was really intense and really scary and gory and, wasn't particularly funny. And so, yeah, I'm curious. I think generally this has been well received, but I would be interested to know if there are more fans who were kind of turned off by it. But
yeah.
As we get into it, I want to take a quote from listener Kyle, who finally has contributed something of worth to this show.
Ouch.
He said, Fede Alvarez seems to have an issue with the openings of his horror films. The opening scene of Evil Dead is the worst part of the movie, and then Don't Breathe opens with a totally unnecessary in media res scene that spoils the end of the movie. We talked about the Don't Breathe opening, obviously, in our Don't Breathe episode.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the opening of this? Because the opening of this film is sort of like a little pre-title Evil Dead thing. With a family and a girl, and the girl's possessed, and they got the book, and people are creepy, and one guy's got a burned face, and he's got to kill his own daughter, and the daughter killed the mother, and it's just like dumping you right in.
Yep.
And how do you feel? Do you think it's the worst part of the movie? Should I just keep talking?
I mean, I can take it for a minute, give you a break,
okay.
let you have a drink of water.
Because the thing.
I wouldn't say worst part of the movie. I would agree that this movie gets stronger as it gets going. I would actually say that the worst part of the movie is some of the maudlin kind of not monologuing, but sort of passive aggressive jabs everybody has at each other when they're first at the cabin. I would say that's maybe it's not terrible, but I would say it's maybe the weakest part of the movie when they're all just kind of like, you weren't there when Mom was sick. Like, it's like, all right, I get what you're building up, but also can we move it along? There is a weird tone to the opening of this movie where I don't know if it's because if you know anything about Evil Dead as a franchise, there's less question in your mind about whether or not she's possessed. I think if you came into this as a brand new... Like, you didn't have the background. You were just like, I want to go see a horror movie in the year 2013, and I'm 15 years old, and I don't know what this is referring back to. I could see being more like, oh, we're going to watch these, The Hills Have Eyes style creepy people murder this poor innocent girl. And then it flips into, oh, no, she's a demon. Oh, shit. What a twist. I think maybe that twist doesn't work quite as well when you know what the franchise is about.
Yeah.
But I will say it's a interesting way to sort of start on a more energetic note than what you would otherwise do with them all just kind of showing up at the cabin and glaring at each other for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
My theory is that this opening scene is kind of like the thesis statement of the tone that they're going for. Because possibly exactly for what was talked about previously, where Evil Dead has kind of the reputation of it has been horror comedy.
Yeah.
And so to start this the way that it does pretty quickly dispels any notion that this is going to be like a slapstick fest.
Right. Yeah, you're not getting anybody fighting their own hand in the sense of like this is a slapstick comedy.
Yeah, smashing plates over their heads and laughing deer heads and stuff. That's unfortunately
fighting 10 tiny versions of yourself.
Yeah.
In like a windmill or whatever.
Yeah. But But I will say that I don't think that it is necessary to the story. I think without it, the stuff at the cabin probably plays a little bit better.
Yeah.
Because it is creepier to come to that cabin and find that it's been broken into, and then you go down into the basement and there's a pillar that's been burned. Right,
and there's a bunch of dead cats.
Yeah.
I mean, small animals hanged by the neck and rotting in your basement. Yeah.
You can tell it's an update because instead of gourds, it's cats.
Yeah, or like squirrels and small woodland creatures. Yeah, I think that's a good point of like it's actually scarier to have it be to not have that beginning sequence where then you know that, oh yeah, this is happening in this cabin. It's obviously going to be in the basement. Mm-hmm. I think it would be scarier to have it not have that as overtly stated out right in the front. But I also agree that it's like the tone. Like we're going to set the tone right off that this movie is it's going to go there. You know, it's not going to pull any punches. There's going to be gore and violence, and it's not going to be a silly fun time.
Yeah.
I also think Fede Alvarez, like, he's really good at for somebody who makes movies that tend to be heavy on the violence and the bloodshed, he's really like, he's got a keen eye for like visually striking or even pleasing kind of tableaus.
Yeah.
Like there's even a moment in this where the camera just kind of turns as it rises off like from a table, and it's got like the book, a shotgun, a bunch of shotgun shells, and it's laid out in this like perfect little tableau that like a girl would post on her Instagram of like her home office desk setup.
I would be concerned with that.
But do you know what I mean? Where like everything is like perfectly
balanced.
spaced, and it's maybe not symmetrical, but it's like visually pleasing,
very
and it
composed.
all exactly. And he's really great at having some of those shots almost unexpectedly like woven in and out of this otherwise very like grungy and grimy and bloody movie that's covered in like bodily fluids and mud. And I think this opening gives him the opportunity to play with some of those very striking visuals of the harried girl alone in the woods getting cornered in the like foggy bare trees, and then her tied to the pillar and burning is a very striking image as she's like demonically screaming out from the flames.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of an opportunity too for him to say, like, this is how I'm gonna approach all of this visually.
Yeah. I do think that he is a very underrated visual director.
Yeah, I do too.
He's only done, I think Alien Romulus is really his only third real movie. And
there's just some like striking images, and I not to cut you off, but like Kyle mentioned the beginning of Don't Breathe, which
Who?
Listener Kyle?
Oh, yes.
Got it.
Excuse me. Sorry.
And I if I recall correctly, when we recorded that episode, I sort of came down on the side of like, I love this shot, but I do agree that it spoils the ending.
Oh, yes.
But visually, it's so striking to see at the beginning of that movie this, you know, young blonde woman being dragged down an abandoned street of urban blight, essentially by her hair, by some sort of unknown assailant in this very like symmetrical, like up the street way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the director has these like really beautiful shots that he just is like, I have to include this.
Yeah, that shot from Don't Breathe makes me think like he was trying to go for the kind of thing Chris Nolan does a lot, where I just rewatched Interstellar, which I hadn't seen since it came out, and the one thing that it's really good. It's the last 20 minutes or so I could do without, but once he goes into I do too. See, knowing that stuff was coming. Hey, that's what we're here for. Knowing that stuff was coming, it didn't bother me as much than it did the first time, where I was like, what?
Yeah.
Like the parrot? I don't know.
Yeah, getting into some quantum physics bullshit.
Yeah. But the thing Nolan does really well is he will very often present imagery at the beginning of the movie that is you don't know what it's supposed to mean other than just what it is. And then later on we'll come back to and realize, oh, that was actually very important, or that was in Insomnia, I think the first shots in that movie are like blood spreading on a white shirt or something that ends up being really important. But he's really good at that. Or you might find that annoying depending on how you feel about Christopher Nolan. But
the thing that I think Alvarez does is also like, so I was reading a thing about suspense recently, about the concept of suspense.
How was it?
But the thing that this person was writing about that they said that really struck me was that effective suspense doesn't mean that you don't know what's going to happen next.
Oh, right, yeah.
you do know what's going to happen, and it's the anticipation of getting there that is the thing that causes the emotions in you.
Yeah.
And I think that's a little bit of what Alvarez is like leaning on, is like, you know, we're going to end up here or somewhere like it, and now you have to wait. You have to go through the rest of the movie and wait to see how we get back to this point.
Yeah.
Whether it's in Evil Dead with the sort of unnamed girl at the beginning who gets burned at the stake, essentially, or in Don't Breathe, where you see the protagonist herself actually getting dragged down the street.
Right.
You kind of know you're going to end up back in that spot. Like, once Mia's possessed, you know pretty quickly Mia's going to be the one who gets possessed.
Yeah.
And then once she is possessed, you spend most of the rest of the movie thinking they're going to burn her.
Right.
And so I think that's kind of what he's playing with there too, is your sense of anticipation and also setting an expectation and then subverting it later on. Yeah.
They definitely, so the big turn in this, well, first of all, that's very similar to the famous quote from Alfred Hitchcock, which is something like, if a bomb goes off in a room, it's shocking, but it's not suspenseful.
Right.
But if the audience knows there's a bomb in the room, that's suspenseful. Yeah.
Yep.
The sort of twist on the setup in this that they do is the sister, the ostensibly the Cheryl character, ends up being the survivor / main character of the movie. Mm-hmm. Do you think that they successfully do pull off that sleight of hand, or did you always kind of figure she was going to be the last person standing?
I think the first time I watched this, I think it was successful.
Yeah.
I think I thought she was going to have some poignant moment maybe with the brother at the end where she comes back to herself just long enough to be like, do it, burn me or whatever, to sort of absolve him of whatever he had to do. But it kind of did trick me into thinking that David, the brother, was going to be the one. He even had sort of the Ash style blue button down.
Yeah, they do dress him very similar to Ash.
Like, it's similar enough that you get it, but it's not the exact same. Do you know what I mean? Like,
it's
he's
funny,
not
though,
in a cosplay exactly, but it's so, like, Ash's outfit in Evil Dead is so basic that it's easy to sort of have a slight modern replication of it without it being super like, that's a costume.
Yeah. It's funny though, because David in this is kind of a mix visually of Ash, but personality wise, he's more like Scotty.
Do you think so?
Only in that he's never not like the point man of what's going on, Yeah. Whereas the other guy, Eric.
Yes.
Eric is more Ash-like. If we're going back to the first movie, where he's the one who's sort of like the secondary male character who's fucking around with the book and more interested in that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. See, the reason I'm making a slightly skeptical face at you that the listeners can't see is because I think attitude-wise, Eric is more like Scotty.
Okay.
He's kind of a dick.
Sure. That's true.
And Scotty was kind of a dick through the whole thing.
Yeah.
And David is similar in my mind to Ash in that he's the one who's like, okay, let's get you out of here.
Yeah.
Like, I will take you home. You're my sister. I will take you home. And then also just the hesitancy of like not really being able to hurt people. Like he Eric goes full Scotty when he's attacked by Olivia in the bathroom.
Yeah.
And smashes her face to shit.
That's true. Yeah.
Pretty confidently and pretty quickly. Whereas David is kind of constantly a little bit like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to hurt you. I want to help you. I want to save you. And that reads a little more OG Ash.
That's
to
true.
me.
That's true. I would believe that.
Yeah, but I do think you're right that they've sort of taken those characters from the original Evil Dead as archetypes and like blended their characteristics amongst the characters a little bit more, just sort of like a remix.
Eric is definitely dressed more like Scotty.
Yes.
Scotty's got that plaid shirt, I think, that Eric wears.
Blonde, that kind of thing.
I don't think, I can't exactly remember, but I don't think that I totally bought what they were trying to do, mainly because Jane Levy gives an unbelievable performance in this, and David is kind of a wet blanket.
He is.
Like, if David came out as the hero of this movie, I'd be like, oh.
Well, so, I think in that sense, I think this movie both paid for the era it came out in, like suffered for it, and also slightly benefited from it.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was that stretch between like 2003 and 2014 when a lot of the big horror movies were being remade.
Yeah. This, not to cut you off, but this does straddle a really interesting line.
Yeah.
Because as you're saying, it's a remake.
Yep.
It's also kind of coming at the end of the we've got more blood than any person could possibly need, gory torture point thing.
Yes.
But it also is sort of ahead of its time in that it is closer to the kind of thing that they do now.
Right.
Like this is closer to something like Talk to Me than it is the original Evil Dead as far as the actual story they're telling.
Yeah, and the themes and even visually. But I think when this came out, I was not interested in seeing it because so many of those
It's a good thing I didn't ask you to go then.
You probably would have been like, F this girl. We'll never be friends and do a podcast together. But yeah, there'd been like I think like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake and just all of those sort of remakes of the classic like 70s, 80s horror movies were coming out in the like mid to late 2000s.
Yep.
And so I think this movie unfortunately got painted with that brush.
Yeah.
Of sort of like a lesser, just gorier version of these other films that already exist. And that, was unfortunate because I think this movie's actually a lot better than some of those.
Agree.
But it also allowed it to sort of fly under the radar and pull these little tricks of having the sort of milquetoast, bland dude seem like he's gonna be the protagonist because there were a lot of those in that era. So I believed it, like I went into it being like, oh yeah, this tracks with the time period this came out.
Yeah.
And then was pleasantly surprised when he gets immolated.
Yeah, they do a really great job of casting in this movie, I think, because those other movies that you're talking about generally suffer from the hangover of the 90s horror movie casting where it's like a lot of like CW actors and stuff.
Yes.
Like for as much as we enjoyed the remake of Friday the 13th, it's mostly CW actors.
Yeah, it's that dude from Supernatural.
Yeah, and one of the girls from The Flash.
Yeah.
And, it's just they're not really that interesting.
Yeah.
And I think they cast interesting actors in this movie.
Yes.
More so than you probably would expect them to.
Yeah, I agree.
So speaking of the themes and whatnot, how do you feel about the drug rehabilitation thing, that whole setup built into the... Because the thing that's so... exhilarating about the original is that it's about as lean of a story as you could possibly make.
Yeah.
Where it's 5 people go to a cabin,
Yep.
they accidentally awaken an ancient evil, and then they try to survive. Yeah, consequences. Then they try to survive.
Yeah.
You can't just do that, obviously, because this is post Cabin in the Woods, so that's become its own kind of cliche. You have to kind of add more juice to this.
Yes.
So they come up with this rehab thing, which I think for me, watching it this time, it's not that I didn't like that stuff the first time I saw it, because I did think that was a pretty clever way to kind of be the catalyst for the story.
Yeah.
And especially for the sort of a metaphor for how Mia is acting and whatnot. But this time the thing that I didn't like the most the first time I saw it was the creepy demon girl that kept showing up, because that was one thing that I thought
Mia?
That's the thing. So the first time I saw it, I was thinking more of the era, which it's like, okay, yeah, creepy demon girl.
Yeah, long, dark, stringy hair in her face. Yeah.
And it's like, and the thing with Evil Dead also that I've always loved is that there's no real literalization of the thing that they're fighting. At least not in the first one. And so putting it in the image of this sort of doppelganger.
Yeah.
Felt too much of the time for me. This time I'm watching it thinking, okay, this is meant to be a Mia literally fighting her own demon.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's too on the nose or not.
But it's also following in the grand tradition of the movies that came before it in this franchise. Ash fights himself for
true.
all of Army of Darkness.
I mean, if Evil Mia showed up and she had skeleton-based armor on.
Yeah, you'd be more into this.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's a clever way to incorporate that, because even in
That is true.
Evil
Yeah.
Dead 2, Ash kind of, there's moments with Mirror Ash.
The guy in the mirror.
Yeah. So I think it is kind of still playing with that like element from the earlier movies, and then also putting this metaphor on it that gives some extra thematic depth, and it helps explain why everyone's A, being kind of a jerk in general, but specifically B, being a jerk to Mia.
Yeah.
Because they're used to her acting horribly because she's an addict, and she's lied to them, she's nearly died, she's stolen from them, she's done all this different stuff. So it explains why they're so predisposed to ignore her concerns and her distress and to not listen to her, because otherwise it would be like, wow, these people are horrible friends.
Yeah.
Like she's so distraught, and like something is clearly very, very wrong with her, but making it that she's detoxing, people are like, well, yeah, we've seen this before. We've seen this exact thing before. And it kind of explains why there are no cell phones. It explains why no one's willing to leave. So I think it's a neat way of hedging all of that stuff and saying, this is how we're going to keep this world limited to the cabin and the immediate surroundings.
Yeah. And I do think it works too to be sort of an explanation of why she's the one it goes after. Because she's clearly in a weakened state.
Yep.
Mentally and physically and stuff like that.
Yeah. My thing is, I wish they didn't also do the grief metaphor.
Yeah.
Of
it's
like
probably
her,
a hat on the hat.
Yeah, a little bit. It just
Yeah.
felt a little like, why don't we just say the brother moved away and has been kind of living his life, and she's been struggling with addiction.
Yeah.
And there you go. Like that still explains the sort of fissure between them. But you don't need to go into this whole, like, well, our mom died and it was horrible and you weren't there. And so I'm grieving, but I'm also traumatized and I'm also an addict. And it's like, no, sometimes you don't need all of it.
Yeah. Because, I mean, you can still get all of that motivation if it's just him having if she perceives him as having left her.
Yes.
And
exactly.
him being like, yeah, I was a bit of a coward. I ran away.
Right. Or also like the little bit of like, well, what did you expect me to do, Mia? Not live my life?
Yeah.
You could have a little more tension there where it's like he thought, well, I have to live my life. I have to go. I need to start my own career, my own relationships. I can't just stay here and take care of you forever.
Yeah.
Like you could have a little more of a tension, whereas having him ditch her when she's pretty young with their very sick / unstable mother, that paints him in a much more negative light than I think this movie really required.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of those things where it's like, you're always trying to expand on depth of character, but I think you can overwrite that stuff pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Not everybody needs 8 levels of backstory.
Yes.
And I think, it comes across that they're all her friends and they're all there for her, but they're all clearly skeptical of her ability to stick with it.
Yeah.
And they're all aware that the brother is kind of, him showing up is rare.
Right.
And I think that's really all you need.
Yeah. And I think the movie does actually a pretty good job with Olivia and Eric of just sort of light touch of like, he's a school teacher and she's a nurse.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay. So they're fairly, they're in fairly stable jobs, but it sort of explains why maybe, he's just a giant nerd that wants to go study the book. And Olivia, you could read a lot into the character choice for her of like becoming a nurse when your best friend is an addict.
Yeah.
Like you sort of chose a career in which you think you could maybe help her.
Yeah.
And if you then realize that you've kind of let your friend's disease dictate your life, maybe you're a little bitter about it.
Right.
Maybe you're coming down on her a little harder than you would otherwise.
There is also, you would think if she was a nurse, she would have the presence of mind to say, we should probably do this at a hospital.
Well, that's what I like. I think it's interesting to give her that sort of control freak nature as well of making her like, she's clearly like the type A one in the friend group, and she's like, no, I am ultra responsible. I can handle it. Like, she even says at one point in the movie, I'm giving her the same care she would get in a hospital.
Yeah.
Which is like objectively false.
Right, yeah.
But you can see where she's sort of...
Well, I don't know, Amanda. I don't know if you knew this.
It depends on what hospital
But
you went to.
most rehab places have a basement full of dead cats. Oh, damn, I was so close.
I believe it.
And then there's Natalie.
Poor Natalie.
Poor underwritten Natalie.
Poor Natalie, who works at the garage. And that's where David met her.
Yep.
She did not opt into any of this bullshit.
Nope.
Poor sweet Natalie, who just wants to play with Grandpa the dog.
If they really wanted to pull one over on us, she should be the one who
final
comes out at
girl.
the end. Like, that's the most similar to Ash, is the one who's just like, I don't know what's going on here.
It's like, oh God, who's somehow the fifth wheel, even though they have a romantic partner in the group.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's interesting only in how little she has to do.
I mean, I will say the sequence when she gets to kind of do her thing, she does a good job.
Yeah. No, I think her sequence where she cuts her own arm off is probably
and it just like
the highlight of
slides to the
movie.
ground.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel much better now.
How do you feel about all the upped violence and gore in this?
You know, I am pretty impressed by it.
Yeah.
I think it was all done pretty creatively without seeming super it's obviously pretty over the top, but it never veers into like silly or ludicrous.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
The guy who plays Eric is really good at making it seem horrifying what's happening to him.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that really adds to the whole experience of it, where he is so good at reacting.
Yeah.
But yeah, creative use of many home improvement items.
Yep.
And personal childhood trauma, because we had one of those big electric carving knives when I was a kid.
Nice.
And
Yeah.
so when she just kind of like, her hand is starting to get evil and she just looks at the knife and looks at her arm, I was like, oh, I've had this nightmare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good stuff. It also continues the Hollywood fallacy, which I don't care to have corrected because it's not as fun. That you can shoot a nail gun like a regular gun.
Yeah.
Which is not something you can do.
And they'll just spray out like a bullet straight at you.
Yeah, it's great in a movie, but
It's
that's not what
how it
happens in the
actually
real
happens,
world. Sorry to be Neil deGrasse Tyson for there for a second,
but it looks extremely painful.
I remember I
just remember the needle under Eric's
Oh
eye.
yeah,
when
when she's stabbing and it just
and
hits
she's
the
like
glasses.
a robot, and
yeah,
oh man.
I remember on one of the episodes of Badass we were doing, Sean was talking about how basically the things that they do in movies that aren't real. He's like, I don't know why they keep doing the thing where people drop a match onto a thing of gasoline and it blows it, because that doesn't actually happen. And my stance was, it's cool. That's why. It doesn't matter if in your mind it makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't
like flammable liquid, fire.
Yeah,
all right,
I don't want the real world interpretation of that. That's boring.
Yeah, not in most movies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some movies, sure.
But yeah, I love the bit where she's stabbing into the crack in glass, and this glasses is really good.
Yeah, and I like the whole Olivia's fate in general, I think is really well done. I think having the setup of her, like Mia has become fully possessed and vomits into her mouth essentially, and then she goes into the bathroom to clean up, and when she closes the medicine cabinet, and you get the glimpse of her reflection with the face cut off.
Yeah.
I think that's another example of the like showing you where you're going to end up. Of like, yeah, this is what's going to happen to her, and then it happens fairly quickly.
Yeah, she turns pretty quick.
You know you're going to see it because you know then it switches to Eric's point of view, and he's coming into the bathroom being like, "Are you okay?"
Yeah.
what are you doing? And you can hear the like sawing sound of her cutting her own face away.
With the broken mirror glass.
Yeah.
I remember that being a shot from the trailer, I think, of when she turns her face around. Which
you just see the exposed like, teeth.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Really, really well done.
Yeah.
One thing that I think is kind of clever that they do, it's one of those things where, again, the line between this is a clever way to reinterpret this and maybe we're overthinking this is very thin.
Yeah.
But I think they handle it pretty well, where they determine that for this version of Evil Dead, the things that are happening are specifically part of the ritual that brings the quote-unquote abomination to life.
Yes.
So it's all in the book, the cutting off of the face, the tree rape thing.
Right, when she burns herself in the shower. Yep.
I think that's fairly clever. How do you feel about it?
I like that stuff. I don't like the annotations in the book.
Where it just says, don't do this.
I'm actually more okay with the don't do this ones versus like the bitch is possessed or something like that. There's a lot of like nu metal style annotations in that book that just feel like, really? Do
you like the modern interpretation of the book that's like something that they got out of John Doe's house in Seven?
I kind of do.
Yeah.
I kind of think having it be this like extremely detailed and extremely vividly drawn book is really fun. I enjoy the visuals of it. I love that it's like wrapped up in garbage bags and barbed wire, and that moment where he's clipped all the wire off and he just rips it open and it exposes it. Like, I think that's a really great image too. It's really just the like, somebody has written in this ancient book like, this motherfucker's bad. It's like, really? I think the terrifying images of somebody cutting their own face off kind of covers what you need.
I agree to a point, because I do think,
because those are the annotations you leave in all of your own books.
Yeah, it's every textbook. That's kind of where I'm going with this. But like a book like that does that thing, that has been around as long as it has, I like the idea that people have left their mark on it. And it's not just this pristine... I mean, the thing is wrapped in human flesh.
I kind of wish, if that was where we were going, I wish there were maybe a couple other styles of notations on the pages, and not just somebody in their very
with a red
theatrical, like, you take the pen in your fist and you draw big block letters. Like, I wish it was... And just say, like, bitch and motherfucker a lot, like...
Mr. Smith, fourth period, sucks dick,
Or just like a variety of annotations would have been fun.
Yeah.
I
do like the chaotic nature of it, though.
Yeah, I do too.
Because one of the kind of silly things about books like that in movies is that they tend to be very clean, and to see it. I think this movie really rides a line of era where I bet this plays better now than it did at the time.
Yeah.
Because I think the jaded moviegoer, horror moviegoer of 2013 goes to see this. When you find the book and it's wrapped in plastic and barbed wire, you're going to go, okay, when does the Slipknot song start playing? And when you open it, it's got all the carvings and stuff. It's like, okay, we get it. It's really edgy. But I think if you can remove yourself from that preconception of the era, I think it's really cool. Just like Slipknot.
I will also say that watching this the second time, I liked it more than the first time I watched it. Like, I feel like, especially doing it the way we're doing it now, where we've seen Evil Dead 2, and Army of Darkness, and then go into this one where you can see the little bits that they picked from those earlier movies and the little things that they're choosing to include and expand on. I think that makes this a more enjoyable movie.
Do you like the way they handled the callbacks and stuff that they did?
Generally, yes.
I feel like they're pretty slick for the most part.
Yeah. I feel like they're present enough to be there for the people who are fans of the franchise. Yeah. But they're not so overwhelming that the comparison I feel like I always use is trying to watch one of the more recent Phase Marvel movies. Where you're like, even if I appreciate a lot of what they're doing and a lot of it's fun, if I didn't watch 3 different Disney Plus shows and 2 movies that came before this, I have no idea who a bunch of these people are.
Sure.
This movie never falls into that.
Mm-hmm.
You could watch this pretty self-contained as just a cabin in the woods style horror movie with demons.
Yeah.
And you're going to be able to follow everything that happens. It's just these extra things are there for you if you're also a longer term fan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's
the chainsaw bit at the end is fun.
Yes. Yeah. I think there is, again, there's lines you can walk with this stuff where you run into the yippee-ki-yay motherfucker problem.
Yeah.
Where in the first Die Hard, that makes sense in the context of the film.
Right.
But when that becomes the catchphrase, you got to keep coming up with ways for him to say that just become more and more ridiculous.
Right.
You know, just because, he said the thing.
Yes.
And I think in this, they handle that stuff pretty well because they're pulling from stuff that, if you're familiar with the franchise, is pretty instantly identifiable,
yes.
but they're not playing it as exact references.
Right.
You know,
right.
like,
they're not just exact beat for beat recreating when Ash buries Linda.
Yeah. Yeah. Or, you know, the way that the characters are dressed.
Mm-hmm.
I do think it's even funny that even A, the necklace shows up.
Yes.
And B, even the necklace gets an update where it's like more handcrafted than it was originally.
Right, yeah.
But there's other stuff like they pull different lines from the movies and drop them in different places. Like one of my favorite lines from Evil Dead 2, Eric gets. It's a little bit paraphrased where he says, she just cut off her arm with a something. Does that sound fine?
Yeah.
You know, which is, I love that line.
Eric is so obnoxious and such a bitch, and I kind of love him.
But, you know, I
think I relate to the person who would find the ancient evil book and be like, ooh.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. That's me 100%.
Yeah. Sit quietly in a room and read it.
But, you know, they do visual filmmaking callbacks. Like they do the evil through the woods thing.
Yeah, the presence sort of swooping around. And a lot of the sound design is similar. A lot of those like creepy kind of woods noises.
Yep. They do the join us voiceover that shows up. I do think that Alvarez very well chooses where to go full Raimi.
Yeah.
Like the one real time that he goes full Sam Raimi is when they do the evil going through the woods thing, and then it blows through the front door, and like the big wind gust, and she starts screaming. Like that's 100% Sam Raimi.
Yeah.
And I think he only does that like a couple times, and I think he chooses good points to use it, and he doesn't overdo it. Like with everything else, I think that the references to the other movies are slick enough.
Yeah.
That I think he's good at that stuff. I think he's without going into any spoilers, I think he's better at it in this than he is in the Alien movie. The Alien movie is pretty much like, let's just play the hits from the entire series, which I didn't dislike.
Yeah.
But it's not quite as slick as this is.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll have that conversation at some point.
Yes. So, how'd you feel about the tree rape scene?
I mean, I get it. Like we're saying, we're sort of tying it in and referencing back to the original, and it's, if you're gonna have a movie where somebody splits their own tongue with a box cutter or cuts their own face off with the shard of glass,
because the hand split down the middle.
Yeah, like if you're gonna do that stuff, it's like in this movie, in this franchise, of course you're gonna do the tree rape scene. I don't really know if we had to go there exactly. You know, everybody else seems to get possessed nice and easily via like face vomit or whatever. Like could have just gone in her mouth. Still would have been sort of an oral rape if you wanted to read it that way.
Sure.
But didn't have to be quite so.
Which then would mirror nicely the oral rape at the end of the movie.
Yes, the chainsaw fellatio that occurs. Should have been one of the things you'll find.
Oh, yeah. We're sorry. We're losing our touch.
Both fired now.
Yeah. Just you.
Just me. Always me. I mean, it's sort of like I'll allow it. Let me put it that way with the tree rape.
It's one of those.
I will allow it. in this franchise and this franchise
I'm
only.
going to clip that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is one of those weird things, though, where it's like, I guarantee as this was starting to come together, anybody who was told about it, the first question they said was, are you going to do the tree thing?
Yeah.
And it's like, I guess you kind of have to.
Right.
Because if you don't, people are going to go, they didn't even... bunch of pussies didn't do the tree thing.
Right. It kind of doesn't matter.
Politically correct.
It doesn't matter if a girl cut her own arm off with an electric knife and you get to watch it flop to the floor like a dead fish. Like, you didn't do the tree rape. You're not really that hardcore.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it is. I think it is done. The actual thing that enters her is very gross.
Yes.
The actual
Yes, it is.
The actual getting caught up in the trees. That's the thing that I thought was more subtle.
Yeah.
Because she kind of ends up in this like fairy tale briar patch or something.
Yeah.
And it just sort of things tighten in the right spots to pull, and it's a little less overt than they do it in the original.
It's not all these different vines slithering towards her and then like overtly wrapping around her wrists. And the thing I will say, I think it's even less sexualized in this one than it was in the original. You know, like the front of her shirt doesn't get torn open.
Right,
You're not getting vines kind of like cupping a breast or whatever. Like it's just she is restrained and then this thing enters her. And it's gross and horrifying.
It's actually very similar to Jason Goes to Hell.
I don't know if I want to hear the end of this sentence.
Because the exact same thing happens in Jason Goes to Hell, because he vomits up the Jason monster, and then it slithers in up between her legs in the basement, the dead body.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, we can watch that movie again if you want.
We don't have.
We got other things to do.
There are a lot of other movies to watch.
So we haven't really talked about Mia that much.
Yeah, we've kind of talked around Mia.
Yeah. I think, much like Army of Darkness, I should say, much like my stance on Army of Darkness being, I don't know how that movie didn't make Bruce Campbell a star.
Yeah.
I don't know how this didn't make Jane Levy a bigger star.
Yeah, it feels like it should have.
Yeah, because she is phenomenal in this, and she has so much to do.
Yes.
This is like if Leonardo DiCaprio
do it all.
can get an Oscar for the fucking Revenant, where all he does is groan and vomit, then I think she should have at least got a nomination or something.
Yeah. I mean, she does such an amazing job. Like, she sort of plays at the very beginning, you know, you can tell she's like very world weary and sort of tender. Like I mean, like a bruise is tender.
Sure.
You know, like she's oversensitized at that point. She's been through a lot. And then as she starts to detox, she kind of becomes a bitch.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, that makes sense. She's in a lot of physical pain and discomfort and like emotionally the trauma of what she's going through too. And then she starts getting possessed and that sort of slow ramp up to becoming like a full monster. Then she gets to do full monster. She gets to be like the villain of the movie for a huge chunk of it. And then she gets to be the hero too. Yeah. And I buy it all. Like I was 100% in for all of it. I thought she did a great job with all of it. And like, I don't know. I don't understand how this didn't make her a bigger thing.
Yeah. One of my favorite moments is when he's burying her alive and she wakes up and she's like panicking. And then all of a sudden her whole face just calms down. Yeah. And she goes into demon mode.
Yeah.
Very, very good.
And that scene was so good. That's another one of those like Fede Alvarez images kind of thing where it's just like her face with the plastic bag over it.
Yeah.
So it's just her head and her face. And she's otherwise immobile and she's just surrounded by dirt and darkness. And her face is sort of obscured a little bit.
Yep.
And she starts to look like a skull.
Yeah.
It's so good.
She's got those giant eyes.
Yeah, but they're like dark and sunken, and her mouth looks like it's just teeth, kind of like, because you can't clearly see her features. So she has sort of like melted into this just like skull kind of visage. It's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think she's great. Even the scene much earlier on where she's been attacked in the woods, tree rape has occurred. Nobody believes her. And she's in one of the bedrooms and her brother comes in and she is just like crouched against the wall, huge eyes. And she's like, David, something is in here.
Yeah, that's
like
a
when
really
she's
good
doing
scene.
that part. It's so good.
I think that's in the trailer. I remember
Yeah.
it being like, that's pretty good.
yeah. Yeah, I thought she's amazing in this movie.
And when she goes full Cheryl, she's great.
yep.
I guess you watched the theatrical cut. I think I watched. Well, I know I watched the unrated cut. There's a few things that are cut out of it. One of them is that she actually does the "We're gonna get you, not another peep, time to go to sleep" thing. Which I don't know
Interesting.
why they cut that out, but
Yeah.
yeah, she's great. I think the character works really well. I think that the big difference between her and Ash is Ash survives, whereas Mia wins. If that makes
Yeah.
sense. Like Mia is she's surviving, but she's also what's the word I'm looking for? Not accomplishing something, but
No,
like
it is kind of like she has sort of found
conquering. That's the word I'm
Yes,
looking for.
She has found like a deep inner strength that she did not know she had.
Yeah.
And it has come to the surface in this time of crisis and need. Like
Mm-hmm.
she's really been put through the ringer and she's found something in herself that she didn't know was there.
Yeah.
That's going to help her win. Whereas Ash is just sort of like half it's luck and half it's
Yeah.
just like I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I feel like Ash gets to the end of the movie and also doesn't know how he survived.
Yeah.
Like it's not this sort of like triumphant moment. It's like I got by the skin of my teeth.
Yeah.
And that is the best I could have hoped for.
Speaking of things that they didn't do in this, that would have been a nice callback. Nobody gets thrown through a bookcase in this movie. I did find myself, though, in the sequence in the
Or
basement.
just smashes through a door.
Yeah. In the sequence in the basement towards the end, where Mia attacks David, he does get thrown around quite a bit.
Yes, he
much
does.
like, and I actually found myself going, "Oh, there it is."
Yeah.
Like again, it's these stupid things that are such a hallmark of these movies that when
Yeah.
they pop up, I'm like, "Yay!"
But again, not to be like Fede Alvarez super fan over here, which I kind of think I'm becoming.
I think so.
I think it is part of his attention to detail.
Yeah.
I think that it's like he's learned these movies inside and out,
Yeah.
and he is going to pull these little things in that make it feel like an Evil Dead movie, even if you don't overtly identify each thing when it's happening.
Yeah.
You know?
This is me, I think, over deifying the original. But when I first saw this, one of the things that turned me off was I thought they killed them too easily. Because in my memory of Evil Dead is you got to chop them up. You got to chainsaw them. You got to chop them up. Like you can't just like bash them in the head.
Yeah.
Having watched the other three, I think it's fairly consistent with the other ones.
Yeah.
By the time you get to Army of Darkness, Ash is shooting them once and they're dead, so it's
Right.
whatever.
Right. And you sort of get a variety in this movie. You know,
Yeah.
you get like Olivia gets her whole head smashed in.
Yeah.
So there's not much they can really do with that dead body anymore.
Yeah.
But Natalie, you know, she's cut one of her own arms off and nominally just like bled to death.
Right.
And then is brought back and then gets like more of her limbs chopped off before she finally dies.
Yeah.
Eric gets like everything in God's green earth you could possibly do to him happens to him, and then they have to blow him and David up in the
Yes.
cabin. So, you
Yeah.
know, they seem hard enough to kill.
Yeah, I know. I'm just being protective of my baby.
How did you feel about Doppelganger ending? The final monster.
So I feel better about it now than I did originally. Again, having literalizing the monster in the form of a skinny young woman just didn't like. You know, it's not just that. Like when they were showing, they're going through the book, and there's like that one picture of the weird guy in shadow with the eyes.
Yeah.
He's got like a candle on his head and shit.
Yeah.
Like as
My
being
Halloween
like,
costume.
yeah,
Go on.
as being like, you know, the ultimate evil. Again,
Yeah.
I'm like, he's just a guy. He's a guy with a candle. You know,
Yeah.
Evil Dead. I always loved Evil Dead because there was this non-human component to it, where it wasn't just zombies. It wasn't. I mean, they're possessing people, but the
Right.
thing that's possessing them isn't inherently humanoid. You know, it's more unknown than that.
Yeah.
So to see it represented as just, yeah, it's a guy, that's a little bit underwhelming to me. But
Yeah.
I do think that whole final sequence where it's raining blood.
Yeah.
And again, if you're reading it as, all right, she's literally fighting her own demon.
Yep.
I do think that's good. I'm like so close to thinking it's over, like 2 on the nose, but it's,
Yeah.
I think mileage will vary on that.
Yeah, I think you can also make the argument of, you know, you have to visually represent it somehow.
Yes. Yeah.
And maybe even in world say, like, well, the human mind can only take so much. So
Sure.
it's going to create a visual that it can comprehend.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I like it.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of get it because I think the added horror is for her that she is looking into some sort of funhouse mirror version of
Yeah.
herself, and
Yeah.
it's sort of the literal confronting the horrible things you've done in your life and the horrible ways you've acted and treated your loved ones and taken them for granted, and now they're all horribly dead, and it's kind of your fault, and the thing that is part of you in a way is now coming to finally consume you.
Yeah. 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 I think it is any, I don't know if dissatisfaction is the word. I think they make up for anything that I don't really like about it by the sequence itself being excellent.
Yeah.
Like it's just unbelievable.
That's a good point. Yeah, I think if the final fight between her and the monster was not as good, it would be easy to just sort of be like, oh,
yeah.
well, that
I
was
mean,
a letdown.
you know, if it's just the lady shows up and it's like, oh, okay, but it's literally raining blood.
Yeah.
Like a Slayer
Yes,
video.
Yes.
From a lacerated sky.
Yep.
And you've got this the Jeep sequence where the
Yeah.
Jeep lands on her hand and she has
Yep.
to cut her own hand off.
Yep.
And then obviously the coup de grace at the end
Yep.
with the chainsaw through the face is just like,
In silhouette, just.
oh, excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yep.
So, I mean, I can't be unhappy with any of that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
yeah. So I guess that brings us to the end of the movie.
Yes, it does.
Was there one other thing I wanted to bring up? So in the version I watched, there's a mid-credit sequence
Okay.
that is very strange.
Oh.
And not like I don't know. It's strange in that it doesn't really serve any purpose.
Okay.
Where it cuts back and she is walking down the road, and then she collapses in the road, and this truck pulls up. Guy gets out of the truck. He's like, "Hey, lady, are you okay?" And then he puts her into his truck, and they drive off. And then they do this like scare thing where like the music is rising and they're pushing into her face, and you're expecting her to open her eyes and have demon eyes.
Yeah.
But she opens her eyes and she has human eyes,
Huh.
and that's just it. And I was like, oh, what the fuck was that?
Yeah.
Like I mean, I guess it's sort of confirming that she survived or that she won, but
Yeah.
I don't know. It
Yeah,
seems
it kind of felt like I got
pointless.
that from the ending.
Yeah.
As is.
However, when this was coming out, there was a rumor going around that now I feel like I'm almost positive that I saw this mid-credit sequence when I went to see the movie,
Okay.
but the internet is telling me that's not true.
Okay.
So I don't know if I saw this only on the unrated version, but I had heard about this sequence, and so I thought I had seen it. I hope to one day be in a Q&A with Fede Alvarez so I can ask him a weird question like that time that I went to the Billy Friedkin one, and the guy was like, "I'm pretty sure this is in Cruising," and he's like, "That's not in Cruising." He's like, "But I saw it."
yeah.
So the rumor was that there was going to be a scene at the end where a truck pulls up to pick up Mia, and the person driving the truck is Bruce Campbell. And so I went into the movie very excited for this to be the case, and that did not happen, and I was very bummed out.
Yeah.
So you didn't watch any of the credits.
No.
So if you get to the very end of the credits is an even weirder thing, which is there's this weird, the music swells and you see this silhouette of Bruce Campbell's face that I think might be CGI, but I'm not 100% sure. And he turns to the camera and just says groovy, and that's it.
Huh.
And I've never understood it. I think it was just something they did because they were like, well, people they think he needs to be in this, but he does. It's just a really weird tag for the sake of doing a tag that doesn't mean anything. Yeah, that is
weird. I don't really get the point of that, personally.
If he was the guy driving the truck,
sure,
that would have been good.
Yeah.
The other thing, I don't understand.
Yeah. But
the unrated cut, I believe, has 6 minutes of additional stuff. It's
extra
more
nursery
gory.
rhymes.
Yeah, extra nursery rhymes. There's a bit when the cabin explodes.
Mm-hmm.
Right before it explodes, David opens his eyes and he has demon eyes. Which I guess there's been some I don't want to say controversy because it's not something that people care about, but debate, yes, over the supposed 5 souls that need to be consumed for the demon to awake or whatever, because in the theatrical version you don't see that David is possessed,
right? So
the 5th soul, I guess, is the girl from the very beginning, but yada yada yada, who cares, doesn't matter,
right?
Stupid details.
Yeah.
The music is not done by Joe LaDuca. It is done by a guy who works with Fede Alvarez fairly frequently, who has a very unfortunate name, whose name is Roque Baños, which, as far as I know, translates to Rocky Bathrooms. I don't know if Roque translates to Rocky, but I like to think that it does.
I don't think it does, but I think your pronunciation is pretty close.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Mr. Baños.
Mr. Baños. Mr. Bathrooms.
Unfortunate.
Rocky toilets. I think the music's good in this.
Yeah. I think they do some fun kind of callbacks to the original that like sound similar, if not the same.
Yep. Which
is really fun, and some of the music stings and things like that. Yeah.
So when I have it on 4K, and so I put the disc in as I was like making my lunch or whatever, and so the menu was running, and as I can hear the music, but then I hear this like air raid siren. I'm like, what the fuck is that coming from outside the house?
They do use that.
They do, and then so when it rolled over and went through the whole thing again, and the air raid siren came back, I was like, that's in the movie?
It is.
And it's just part of the background music is at one point is this weird siren sound.
It's interesting. It's almost like a Silent Hill reference in a way.
Interesting.
Because that's in the games, I think, and definitely in the movie.
Yeah.
Which I've been tempted to make us watch, even though it's not a great movie.
We're not here to watch great movies exclusively.
We're here for the 200 greatest horror movies of all time.
That's true. I guess we fundamentally are here to watch great movies.
Yes, we are.
So how do you feel about this movie overall? This is not on our list. Would you put it on the list?
It's a close call for me, honestly.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Because I actually really like and appreciate this movie, and I feel like every time I rewatch it, I find some little extra thing to be like, oh, that was really thoughtfully done, or that was really well crafted.
Yeah.
But I think just given that it is sort of the third remake of the same story, I can see why it's not on the list. You know?
Yeah.
Like I think in terms of like a quality reinterpretation, it's really high up there, but it's tough. It's tough to put like a thing that's X levels removed from the original on the list. You know?
As far as I know, having not specifically gone through and really searched this out, there are, aside from something like The Thing or something of that esteem, there are no, at least from the 21st century, there are no remakes on this list. So Texas Chainsaw Remake is not on the list. I'm sure someone's screaming at me that there is, but as far as I know, there isn't. I'm going to go on a limb and say there's not. Friday the 13th remake is not. Nightmare on Elm Street is not. If I were to put a remake on the list, it would probably be this one.
Yeah, I agree.
Because I do think this is... well, actually, now that I say that, Let Me In is technically a remake. Well, it is literally a remake, but I'm thinking more of like remakes of classics.
Sure.
Oh, my own worst enemy here.
Yep. It just keeps digging the hole deeper.
So as far as those remakes go,
I
think this is probably the best one. I actually think I wouldn't be opposed to doing the remake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre at some point, because I remember seeing that in the theater, expecting the worst and thinking it was actually pretty good.
Interesting.
So
I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, maybe we'll do that somewhere down the line.
Yeah. By the way, belated happy Texas Chainsaw Massacre Day to all of those who celebrate.
Oh, that's right. Is it 50 years this year? Or was that last year?
I think that was last year, but it's August 18th is the day in the movie. So,
don't you love that new trend? Every movie with a date now gets its own day.
I do.
What did they sell? Is there anything they could sell to commemorate this? Sausage or something?
I was going to say housewares.
Housewares?
Goblets, plates, bowls.
We could have had an Evil Dead Day if they just had put a date in the goddamn movie.
There you go.
But yeah, I think this is really good. I was a little bit cooler on it the first time I saw it. I think because
Same.
like I didn't, like I said, this franchise is precious to me.
Yes.
But I do think, I think that for the most part, the Evil Dead franchise is probably one of the most consistent franchises out there. I mean, you haven't seen Evil Dead Rise yet, right?
No, not yet.
All right, I'm curious to see what you think of that, because I think it's still in the same ballpark. I don't think it's quite as good as the other ones, but I think it's a fun time. But anyway,
All right.
we will get to that next month. And so I think what we're going to do,
Yes.
we're going to do Evil Dead Rise. I'm thinking about this in real time. I have not planned this out.
I was going to say, I do not know what he's about to say.
We're going to do Evil Dead Rise, and that'll be the end of our summer cabin series.
Yes.
I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks, and so I believe what I'm going to do.
You've rented a cabin.
I've rented a cabin
in the woods
in Australia, which actually I believe is where they shot this, or possibly New Zealand, which I will also be in. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put up the first episode of our Halloween coverage from Patreon on the main feed. So if you're interested in the rest of that, you can head over to patreon.com/the Penske
Get in the mood for the season.
Yeah. I do want to do the first episode of Ash vs. Evil Dead.
Okay.
But maybe we'll do that on Patreon, like as just an extra Patreon episode or something. But we'll handle that when we get back.
You're the boss.
After Halloween, we'll be back to the regular schedule.
Yes. After Halloween the movie, not
Halloween the movie.
the day.
Yes, we'll be back to the movies off the list until Amanda comes up with a 5-movie franchise that she wants to over-explain to me.
Oh boy. It'd be a bad one.
Oh boy. But yeah, I think that's going to do it for us for now for Evil Dead, the remake. We will see you next time with Evil Dead Rise. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, Clay.
Thank you guys for listening. We'll see you next time.
Bye.